AI and you, fear, anguish, and hope. Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, let me invite Mr. Kashyap Kompella, the host for the second session of the day, onto the dais. Can we have a huge round of applause for the host? The host will be joined by two more guests on the dais, and these three distinguished AI experts and authors will be discussing about the complex emotions that artificial intelligence invoke in human beings. And yes, he will be joining with Tanuj Bojwani and Shalini Kapoor, but may I hand it over to the host to introduce and invite the speakers onto the dais. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the audiences for showing up on a Saturday morning. May I first invite Shalini Kapoor to please come on stage. Please give her a big round of applause. Thank you. So, since all of you are from Bangalore, please have a seat. It may not surprise that Tanuj is having a bit of a traffic issue, so he's just going to be joining us in a few minutes. But in the interest of time, we'll get started. So, my name is Kashyap Kompella, and I'm an industry analyst and visiting faculty for AI in a few B schools. So our session is titled AI and You, and the inspiration for this title comes from Shalini's book, which is called AI for You. So AI is a very powerful force, and that will have impact on all of us here in this room and those who are not on this room. So this panel is going to examine the highs and lows of AI, the delights and the dangers, and what's the dark side as well as the opportunities. So can we have a mic for Shalini, please? So we have the pleasure of having Shalini with us today. I'll let her introduce herself, but she's a very accomplished technologist with many patents to her name, and she's been recognized as CII's Emerging Women Leader of the Year. And this book, I encourage that all of you check it out. We'll talk about it. This, I found that is an excellent guide on how to take AI from the lab to the field. So with that, welcome Shalini. And what made you write this book?
And thanks for asking this question. It's a pleasure to talk about it. I know AI is actually very misused also. Everybody knows AI, but still they don't know details about AI. So the reason I started writing this book is this is back in early 2020. Gen AI had not hit, and people, I was working in AI for the last, already for the last 5-6 years. And then in 2020, I thought about it that still there are so many questions people have, fear. The fear of AI was so much around. Like people would say, either it's going to be doomsday for us, or we are going to have like no jobs, or we don't know, Shalini, what you're working on. It's very complex. Do you think it will ever see the light of the day? People would actually ask me these questions in conferences and places I visited. But in my, and also what people were doing is they were telling use cases which were happened, or success stories of AI which had happened only globally in USA or in European markets. Nobody was talking about AI which was happening very much in India. So my objective was, first of all, talk about case studies and talk about AI which we have been using currently. In 2020 we were using it, right? And also build a framework, explain to people that how not to go and fail in AI, right? Because if you have to succeed, you're putting investments as a business or as a user, you're putting into it. So that investments have to benefit so that AI can itself increase. So the fear of AI, the promise of AI, the confusion of AI. These are the three things which I said I'll cater to. And you need an AI mindset for it. An AI mindset is about that, you have to understand that you have to start at the strategy level. Simple management principles also apply to this technology. So the idea of the book was to, assimilate all these successes or give some right examples so that people don't fail and they adopt more.
I think that makes sense. I mean, there is a lot to unpack there: AI mindset, AI fears, hopes, etc. We will return to those things. But you mentioned that you wrote this before ChatGPT or generative AI burst onto the scene. So would you have used ChatGPT to write the book if you wrote it later?
So first of all, I have talked about, see, ChatGPT is, at that point of time, GPT-3 was already in, there were research, there were papers which were written. So it was already in research. So it's not that it happened suddenly in like 2022, where everybody, all of us came to know. It was there before that. It was happening in research. There were researchers working on large language models for years. So nothing happens immediately. There is a lot of, background to it. And by the way, AI tools were available even at that time. And I keep telling various authors, and also when I am thinking of my new books, you can always use AI tools to revise, to improvise, to make it better. But the human creativity and the thinking which needs to be there has to be driven by human. And why do we talk only about AI? Think about any machine that we use. And in fact, that's what I talk about in my book, that till the time, right from Stone Age, people would say, why would you use a tool? Why would you use a hammer? Why would you use a lever to climb certain things? People would question when car came in. People questioned when electricity came in. People questioned not just that. I mean, a lot of us would remember when computerization happened in 1980s, there was a big strike by all the government employees saying, my jobs are going to go away. What will a cashier do? What will an accountant do? But today, see, the fintech industry is one of the largest industry that we have, and the amount of proliferation of technology and people and jobs, everything has happened. So, the question of tools being available is an aid to us, because it's an aid to a human being at the end of the day. We are the creators. We have created AI. Let's never forget that. We are the ones who demanded AI to be created. We are making it better by feeding it with data, and we are the ones who are also thinking of bias or bias mitigators and bias limitations. So we are the owners of AI.
No, absolutely. I think there is a biblical saying which says that we make the tools, man maketh the tools, and then the tools maketh the man. I think that hasn't been truer in any other technology other than AI. So on that, like how these tools make us, there is an interesting point. I'm sure a lot of, almost all of you are on LinkedIn, right? So what does CFBR mean? Like in LinkedIn or Facebook, you may have seen people commenting CFBR, commenting for better reach. So it's a very simple way. So we are modifying our behavior. We don't have anything to add to that comment, but we want a particular post or something like that to be seen much more widely. So we say CFBR. So there are small and simple ways in which we are changing our behavior. In LinkedIn, in other posts, you would also see, okay, I make a post, but then say, look to the comment for the link. So in subtle ways, so many ways our tools are nudging and we are being nudged by them. In that light, it's not just like the everyday common people that are being affected by AI. So recently, if you have seen, Time magazine had come up with a list of 100 most influential people in AI. And Anil Kapoor, Mr. India Anil Kapoor is featured in that. So anybody has any guess as why Anil Kapoor or Anil Kapoor is, Shankar, you know the answer, so you set the paper, so okay. Why is Anil Kapoor in the Times most influential list of AI people? Any guesses? Correct. I think there is a court case, his voice was used. So big round of applause for our... Any gifts? I have a copy of Shalini's book, she can autograph and give it maybe. So in that sense, like we are being influenced by AI in ways, so many, what do we say, perceptible and imperceptible ways. So, but before we get into deep dive into the AI mindset, AI, etc., I'm sure like each of us has our own notions of what AI is. So let's start with the basics and say, what is, can you help us bring all of on the same page? Like when we talk about AI, what is your definition of AI? And then from there, take us to what are the sum of all fears about AI? What are the hopes from AI?
Yeah, sure. So, I won't get into the literal definition, and I'm trying to be less technical in this crowd, because what we need to understand is the impact of AI. I think that's the most important thing, which if we carry it back. So, there are various terms. There is machine learning, there is, generative AI, there's pure AI. There are various terms and function, thing. I think the most important thing, and Tanuj is not here, but he'll join soon. He's penned the book with Mr. Nandan Nilekani, The Art of Bitfulness. So Mr. Nandan Nilekani said, which is, and I'm saying this because it's so relevant for India. He said, India will be the AI use case capital of the world. Right? India will be the AI use case capital of the world. Now let's get into this more in detail, right? When we say AI, people talk about algorithms, people talk about models. When models means the large language models, the LLMs, these are all manifestations of AI. These are all products, or you can say, different form of AI, right? You can have predictive models, you can have generative models, the large language models. There are various, no need to get into the technicality right now, but you can go, it's all available, all this data is available. But the question is that there is no, will there be a model? Is this model good or that model good? There's so much of model wars happening. The right thing is not to get confused in this model wars, because it's somebody else's war, it's not your war. What you have to understand is, how does AI get implemented in your organization or in your field or in your area, and how can you skill yourself up if you're interested, right? So the question of what is AI itself is changing, but the impact of AI is yet to be felt. So it's important that we understand that the use cases, whether in healthcare, whether in education, agriculture, publishing, the whole publishing industry is changing today. We are all authors and writers and into the publishing industry. The way it is being envisaged is changing absolutely, because there are newer tools, there are newer image generation techniques. You don't need to spend too much time getting the cover design of the book itself, because images are getting generated. How, so that entire cycle is changing, and it's really important that we change our job profile or our role that we are doing. That is going to change, and that is going to change because of AI, with AI, and due to AI. And another part which I want to say is that it is not only for technologists like me, or people in STEM, or people doing degrees in math and science, because people in humanities, people in commerce, people in doctors and medical sciences, all are going to be touched by AI, and you need to understand whether that AI is working for you, which has been given to you, whether it can you improve it for your own use, how to give data back to the people, and how to interact with the people who are building the models. Hence you need to skill up. So that skilling up is a must happen. Like, there was a question, do I need to use a computer? Like 30 years back, by all the Indians were I mean, my parents used to say, do I need to learn computer? Of course, you are doing computer science engineering, that's more than enough for us. But then things changed, and today my mother can operate, my father still cannot as much, but my mother can operate almost everything on a laptop. So the change in AI is going to pervade, and there will be newer, like, AI ethicist. I mean, think about it. A person in humanities can become an AI ethicist. It's an AI job role which has got created absolutely new. And because you had, ethics background or humanities background, you are the best person to learn AI and become an AI ethicist. So there are roles which will change, conversations, languages, newer problems are coming in, and it's important that we understand the use cases of AI and see how it relates to ourselves. And hence, I'm not answering the question which you said, what's the definition of AI, but I'm just saying that what is important is to understand the impact of AI.
Now, how does AI impact you? I think that's why your book is also called AI for You. So, I'll pick up on what you said. So to paraphrase what your closing theme of AI is not just for people from IITs or people with PhDs, the non-STEM people, the non-science, the technical, and people also have a role to play in AI. So can you elaborate on that? And before that, please give a big round of applause for Tanuj. Can we get him a mic, please? Yep. So I mentioned that Anil Kapoor was in the Times 100 AI 100 list, and one more Indian on that list is Nandan Nilekani. And Nandan and Tanuj have written this beautiful book, The Art of Bitfulness. It's got fantastic, keeping calm in a digital world. So I'm sure like Tanuj was keeping calm even though he was delayed in the traffic.
No, I apologize. Actually, it's sort of I aimed for the wrong time. That was entirely on me. I thought I was coming here early. I didn't expect to make such a dramatic entrance. I'm really sorry to the audience.
No, so we were just getting warmed up and started. So Shalini spoke about why she wrote that book, etc. So let us we'll come back to Shalini in a bit. But so when I was reading this book, something on the blurb caught my mind. It said that this book is not anti-tech, but it's pro-you. So you seem to hint at a tension between technology and people. And also, I mean, the title is like very intriguing, bitfulness. So what is bitfulness, and why should we be bitful?
So, thank you for the question. When we were writing this book, it was the pandemic.
Sorry, before that, please introduce yourself as well.
Sorry, hi. My name is Tanuj Bhojwani. I do two things. I mean, I've written this book and I try to talk about our technology and our relationship to it as far as I can. And the other thing I do also is I run this organization called People Plus AI, which is how I know Shalini professionally and in work, etc., which is a not-for-profit, which is thinking about how do we use the power of AI to help the majority of India, which unfortunately does not look like us, and sort of very different lives that they live. So who's building tech for them? I have been part of the India Stack sort of ideas, which is UPI, DigiLocker, DigiYatra, these various public good technologies that sort of hopefully are helping you in your lives every day. I've been sort of part of a team that thinks and tries to build stuff like that. So that's me. The book, is therefore an extension of that work where in the pandemic, I think some people started podcasts. Nandan and I decided to write a book. And the book that we wanted to write was inspired a lot by that time when we suddenly got locked in. All we had, our only connection to the outside world was our screens. And I think a lot of us overreacted to that with like what the word that emerged was doom scrolling, where we're on our screen, we're just scrolling through the news, you're looking at what's wrong with the world, how we never know when this will end, what will come out. And if you remember, at least for me, that time was incredibly high uncertainty, right? At the same time, like if you go outside, the birds were doing what they were doing, right? The trees are still there, lights. There's a lot of things about life that were still exactly as they were. But our screens were telling us that we have entered this, doom, and I don't know what's going to happen. Like everything is ending and everything is shutting down. And as we always do, we bounced back, right? But I think the emotional turmoil was, I would like to believe, much higher because of the way that we were connected to the world and the systems we had for those information to reach us. So that's where the name Bitfulness came, is that you need to be a little mindful, have a little mindfulness about the bits that you are consuming, right? So being a bit mindful and about sort of technology and digital, that's where the name Bitfulness came from. And this anti-tech pro-you, I think, because there's a lot of, around that time, 2016, Cambridge Analytica, 2018, Facebook was just going through its worst times. I think a lot of sentiment was, okay, social media is bad, right? And we need to like cut it down. I think that's sort of not very helpful, because with all of these technologies, there is always an argument at least to be made that there is a benefit or there's something that you are getting. And a lot of us would found out about this event or coming here online, right? These are useful things, although you can also at the same time have a question, but is it worth spending hours on this, right? 6, 8 hours, especially of the youth, on these technologies, etc. And therefore, how do we balance that? And to flip the lens into looking at this back as tools that help us. So therefore, how can we make the most of them? We can get into specifics in the next question, but that's the sort of overall theme and the idea of the book.
Like, if you were to quickly summarize, how can one be bitful? Like an elevator pitch.
Elevator pitch really is that, like with anything else where you want discipline, but you know you won't have it. Like let's say a diet or your exercise regimen or whatever. You have to set up a system wherein by the friction of doing the thing that you would like to be doing is easier, and doing the thing that you don't like doing is harder, right? Like at the very least, that is it. There are a few specific strategies in the book, but the primary, and what we try to do is sort of tell you stuff that we've lived through. So this conversation also happened because Nandan and I were taking walks in the park in Kormangla because there was no, like, you could have a lot of Zoom meetings, but when we were all staying nearby enough that we said, okay, let's just do this one meeting in a park a week type of thing to catch up on work. And now a meeting in a park, unlike a Zoom meeting, which you can end if it ends early, which rarely happens. I wish it happened more in a Zoom meeting that, you scheduled for 45 minutes and 10 minutes is done, ho gaya, now we'll end the call. But in a park, in the walk, you can't do that. You've come for a walk, you're going to walk for 45 minutes. So what do you talk about? And then we started talking about slowly what's happening, what we are seeing, what is on the news, and how are we dealing with all of this, right? Like, how are you personally taking this? So, and then Nandan and I, somehow we started talking about how are we dealing with all the incoming, the messages, the meetings, and we found that there was a surprising amount of similarity, even though like our age gap and I would say I'm a little more digital first than he is. He only got a smartphone in 2015, which is late by by most of our standards. Yet the strategies used for coping were very similar, right? Some tweaks here and there. So we said, okay, this is something worth maybe exploring or writing about. And then as we started doing it, it started looking more like a book length project. So that's sort of also where it comes from. So all the stuff we've written in the book is primarily stuff that we've been practicing and we find more helpful. And we found it surprising that it's common across this generation independently. So we said maybe there's something here, and that's where it came. And partially the strategies are around this only. Like the elevator pitch is increase friction.
So I'll just add one point that today your diet can be monitored and managed by AI. So I've talked about Healthify Me, which I think a lot of you would be using. It can manage your nutrition plans. There's a RIA, the nutrition planner for you. And the interesting part is that and I spent a lot of time with Healthify Me team. They have fed in all the Indian diets and poha or vada pav or kanda poha with batata or without batata, that kind of things. It has been happened so much. So today, your nutrition plans are covered by AI. Your walk in the park is covered by AI. It is more effective and for marathon runners, for fitness experts. I've also talked about Viome, which is again a biological life sciences and gut health, which can be governed by AI. So yeah, too much is bad, which I think Tanuj is bringing. But then, how do you do more with less and get more information with the data that you have is what AI helps you.
So AI for actual diets, AI also for information diets. So I'll add one of my tips, which is like read books. Switch off the phone, read books. As a business literature festival or literature festival, I think that's a good way to be bitful. So we have a sign that it's time for audience Q&A. So please, if we can get, anybody has questions, we can get the mic to you, or can come over here. Who has questions, please raise your hand. Sir, please introduce yourself and then give us your name and ask your question.
Okay, my name is Manoj Sengupta. I am definitely a tech phobe. So my question or my comment may be extremely laymanish. We talk about AI so much, and it's always a kind of a juju around our, head. when the calculator came in and you typed in 2 plus 2 and it conjured up 4, would that be the cave person version of AI?
So, at the end of the day, what does a calculator do? It is taking away the mundane work which is easy for you to do, or either it's very complex. Like, suppose it is like 4,332 into 5,665, right? I mean, it's either doing the mundane tasks which a shopkeeper is wanting, very quickly to find out what the bill is. So the mundane task and the complex task, if you apply AI to it, then yes, that is exactly what we should be doing. And when I mentioned about and Tanuja talked about Nandan saying India being the AI use case capital, the use cases should be used for all the mundane things which humans are doing, so that they can get into the higher order value and do intellectual things and spend more time in creativity, like writing books, and also doing more creative stuff, and also the very complex stuff like human genome. Think about the human genome, and today, I have worked with genomic scientists who are actually coding, that what kind of pandemics might exist later on, because and what how Indian population might be prone to it. All that can be happen, and it needs huge amount of compute, huge amount of algorithms, huge amount of data. So the complex tasks. So if that's the analogy I can draw for you, that yes, mundane and the complex task is where AI should be applied.
So I'm sorry, I'm not at this thing, as erudite as you people are. Uh, is the calculator the caveman version of AI?
What version, sorry?
The calculator, when it came in 2 plus
So
2 is
if
equal to
if
4.
you think calculator, I would say abacus is the basic version.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where computation started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's
See,
what I was doing.
Just to add to my piece on that, when we get the, can we get a mic to Professor Raghunathan here? He has a question, and the gentleman behind Professor Raghunathan has a question after that. See, whatever was previously not automatable, we consider it as like AI, but once it's been automated and we do it consistently, it stops being AI. So what is AI is sort of a moving definition.
Yeah, a quick question. You see, I gave my inaugural address, which was generated by ChatGPT. But I showed that when I asked it for jokes, they weren't all that good, which means the creative side is still lagging. What is your assessment that how long will it be before artificial intelligence creates creativity which is comparable to average human? Maybe not an Einstein, but an average human. Any guesses?
Probably next week. I mean, that the ways this industry is moving. But no, I think if I may take a little bit, like a step back and try to answer that question. How do we expect a machine to get the nuances of history, culture, etc.? Now, sometimes it makes really funny puns, stuff that even I wouldn't come up with. It is able to find sort of unexpected endings or twisty endings. Like if you give it a very good template and say, find me examples of things that are contrasts, and then say I was going to X, but then Y, and then ask it to generate. It will generate hundreds and thousands of options that you and I would not even have come up with, right? But of those hundreds of thousands of options, maybe there are 5 or 10, right? That when you read, you see, oh, there's something here, and if I make this real tweak little bit here, it will be funny because you understand the context of your listener and the humanity and what they'll find funny, right? So if you look at it in that sense, you'll be a little more step back and ask this question: what is this machine doing? Am I expecting this machine to be a human, to be funny like a human? Yeah. I don't think that. So yes and no. Today, in certain examples, you're already seeing that. Like puns, very specifically. If you ask it to come up with puns, it is very good at doing that, for example. But to the extent that it will be funny naturally like a human is, it's unlikely, right? Because like outside of known jokes and known joke templates, it is not very good at that, what you are calling creativity, which is like original thought. It is very good at remix creativity. So again, via search, we explore lots of areas, pick the one that works. Through search, it can happen. But through original thought, like you and I do, I think that's harder.
See, I would just ask you to think a little bit more. It's a multi-dimensional problem because language, speech, text, audio, there's a lot of work which both Tanuj and myself, we both are also working on the multi-languages in India. You know, and the combination, you have English, you have Tamil and Hindi, your Tamil and English together, and in a prescription written by a doctor, which is half little Tamil, little English, little Hindi word like juvar. Juvar is a what kind. So think about the problem. Now, if you think about the problem, if you think you are, if I think I am, if you think about the problem, then researchers are working on it, and it will happen as well because you have put your minds to it. Today, India has put systems for 22 Indian languages to be fed to AI models and help you translate the text on your phones. That problem is being solved, right? So you think of a problem, it will be solved. If you can't think of a problem, it will take time.
I want to, then we'll come to the gentleman behind, after that we'll come to you. So to quick answer to Professor's thing, I think true art comes from pain. They say that our most beautiful songs, our sweetest songs are of our saddest thoughts. So unless you feel that pain, unless machines feel that heartbreak, that pain, maybe that art won't come from machines at all. Your question, sir, yeah.
Just to make sure I'm visible to all. So my name is Ranjan Kumar Sahu. I'm a contributory author to a book titled India in 2047, which talks about the amazing rise of the modern nation. So my question to both the esteemed speakers derived from what Professor Raghunathan asked. Let's travel a century after 2124. How do you see the competition between AI and man? Thank you.
Great question.
So I don't think in that era it will be a competition. I don't think it will remain a competition.
Are we behind or
There will be no competition. It's not a question of these two parties competing each other. It will be all in hand, in arm, and the biggest user, master, slave, friend, foe, everything would be AI, right? So it is like brother in arms or sister in arms, as you might call it.
Okay, it seems you are saying that AI will be mother of all ours.
No, I don't think so.
Cared by AI.
Human invention. It's definitely more than a tool. It's definitely more than a tool because if you're sister in arms, brother in arms, you are not just a tool. It's definitely you are more than that.
So the word robot, do you have any guesses when it was first used and where? The word robot, R-O-B-O-T, when do you think, which year was it first used? 1920? Who was that? Google, the person with the phone, I can see you there. Just kidding. But yeah, no, that's correct. It was in a play. It was to show this idea that we will have machine slaves, right? Because at that time, the steam engine and motors and electricity, electrification, and then cars were just about picking up. So at that time also, our imagination went to this idea of a human clone that is entirely a machine. The idea of the brain and thinking and all that was just an abstract black box problem we haven't solved. So 100 years ago, to answer your question about 100 years from now, roughly 105 years ago, 104 years ago, we were thinking about similar things. So personally, I don't know how to answer that question. 100 years is, I can't tell you what will happen next week, literally in this field. You asked me yesterday, they released something. It's no idea. But it is unlikely that we give up the position of architects of the destiny of the human race. Like I personally would step up and fight against that, giving away control to this thing. So I don't see a future where, like Shalini is saying, where we are not cooperating. We are not doing this or shaping this technology into what we wanted to do, right? The questions then become once again politics, right? Like who has the ability to decide what to do with it, which is a very standard human question, from oil to water to...
All right, so we're almost out of time, but last two questions. Ben and that ma'am there at the back. Please keep your questions and responses brief, please.
Yeah, a question to, see, XStep is a big deal for India. And very few of us know exactly what it does, and especially now how you're integrating AI into it. I think quickly, if you could tell us.
So Ek Step Foundation is the philanthropy started by Nandan and Rohini Nilekani. Ek Step, first step, just like do something kind of idea. It started by doing this big project called Diksha, Digital Infrastructure for Knowledge Sharing. Forgetting what the A is, sorry. Um, it was a way to give a common platform to everybody in the education, primary education and secondary education ecosystem, tools to help teach better, learn better, track what's happening in schools, etc. So it's like building blocks for all of that. Uh, Look, one of our primary beliefs about this technology of AI is that India is a country, even though we are able to get internet to a lot of people, 80% of households or higher than that tend to have a smartphone. Even in rural India, we saw with the ASER report that 87% of the people know how to use a smartphone that they surveyed. But we are still failing people on like basic literacy, basic numeracy. That same ASER report will tell you a grade 6 student can't read a grade 2 textbook, etc. So the way that we think about AI is that this is in some ways makes it a lot easier for people to access the power of computers and internet. So we're trying to simplify that even further and bring it, like Shalini was saying, in 22 Indian languages to everybody, so that they're comfortable interacting with it. We're already seeing the students are interacting with these technologies because there's no shame, there's no teacher who like sort of makes you feel stupid if you don't get it or has a lack of patience, etc. So we're seeing certain benefits that come from this technology. I'm still not in a place where I advocate for it being replacing a teacher or anything of that sort. I think that's important enough to have, but we still have to figure out how to accelerate outcomes, and that's what Xstep is doing. But then, because of this new wave of technology, Xstep has expanded its definition to not just learning but lifelong learning. So they're also doing work, training, skilling, and there's work happening in that. And I then look at how AI helps more broadly. So sort of within our group, we are covering a lot of areas. We're in Kormangla. We are very happy to come by and see what we're up to.
Two last questions we'll have, one and one here, please. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Fiona and I'm the founder of Actions We Empower. We work with people facing domestic violence. My question is about Bitfulness. Are we saying that people are programmable or they should become programmable to stop and smell the roses? Is that what we're saying?
That a lot of what we do, whether we like it or not, and what we think and feel, is culture, is forces outside of ourselves. And then what we've seen is choice engineering is the version of this in retail. For example, the fact that whenever you go to a grocery store now, they force you into that aisle. And in that aisle on both sides, there are rows of things that you don't need, but you will pick up and buy, like chewing gum, like whatever, right? We're seeing this with something as simple as wine, right? When you go to a fancy place, there are wines you've never heard of, and there are prices you've never heard of because you don't know what to associate. But if I were to give you Johnny Walker or something, you know exactly what it costs. And in Catholic club, if you've been and you know what it costs, you go outside, you're going to bulk, right, at the prices. So, but a wine list, because of the way it's done, the wine list is separate in a menu. Somebody comes and asks you what wine will you have, right? They give only one wine list per table so that you're ordering for the table. And if you're ordering for the table, you're ordering wine, not ordering individual drinks. These are all things that have been done drastically somewhere in America to start selling wine. And now it's come here also and you don't even know it, right? But these were manufactured things. There is a man in Norway who's been given like their highest civilian award because he managed to convince the Japanese to put salmon in sushi, right? The Norwegians produce salmon and he traveled to Japan, interface with this and get sushi. I'm telling you all of this because there are weird ways in which our choices are programmed. Because somebody else sitting somewhere invented the like button. Now we're all going around wanting that validation, right? But this one guy, Chamat, he's a tech person only, and he said, I invented the like button, and I'm not sure if what I did was great. So yes, we are programmable in the sense that we're easily influenced, but that's not a bad thing. It's not a bug. It helps culture, vagera. But if we understand and realize it, we can be a bit more mindful about how we let it affect us.
last question for this panel, please. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Dore, I'm an impact advisor and I write on the regional economy and have been familiar with many of the tech for good interventions. And I thought it's very interesting that both of you come at this issue from different perspectives. If there had to be a takeaway for a young 25-year-old from, say, one of the tier 4, tier 5 cities or one of the district towns in India, a young 25-year-old had to take away something interesting from your books, what message would you like to leave them with?
Which I would like to leave definitely in my book is AI has, the question is not about good AI, when will it happen, etc. How do you skill yourself? India today needs so much of AI talent to solve the complex problems for the social good. The social good is demanding, whether it is about predicting a disease which is going to happen, whether it is about the nutrition plan that I talked about, or the wellness, or the education in which AI can help so much. And for that, you need builders. It will not happen automatically. It could be somebody who's giving data, somebody who's designing it from a UI perspective, so that actually I don't realize that I'm using AI. The UI, when I say UI, the user experience part of it, the design of things have to be so simplistic. Today, why do we use the UPI payment so much? Because it's so easy. So the ease of use, it needs thinking. It needs somebody to, to skill up and understand the AI system and build for it. For conversation, like, we talked about the 22 Indian languages. There is a Konkani language, you would have heard of Tulu, right? How much of data is available? Today, the models are getting created even in Hindi. The number of token size is so small because the amount of digital data on Hindi itself is small. So the skilling and the need is so high, and the complex problems in the social sector are so many to solve. Let's put our minds to that. And that's what my takeaway is.
Very quickly, 10 seconds.
Optimism about the future, like Shalini is saying, but you have to be careful what influences you in an age of influencers, right? So you can be more thoughtful about what you let infiltrate your mind, right?
Thank you. I mean, it's a pity we're just getting warmed up, but the time is in short supply, and you've been a great audience. And a big round of applause to our panelists, please.
I thank all the speakers on the dais. Thank you so much. Please to remain on the stage as we have a small token of appreciation. I request at this point of time, Mr. Harish Bhatt, please to join us on the stage to present a memento, a token of appreciation for our speakers for joining us in this occasion. A huge round of applause for Ms. Shalini Kapoor. Thank you so much, Mr. Tanuj Bojmani, for joining us in this occasion. I thank all the speakers. Thank you so much. Please do join us in the audience. Well, yes, everyone, it is time for us to break for a tea. I request all the guests to remain on the dais for a photograph. So please do join us for the photograph.